Okay, hi.
Hi there.
Sorry for all the technical stuff.
I'm amazed at how you know how this stuff works.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna check focus. Okay. Okay. So. So let's see. So today is what's the date today? It's the
28th or 29th, somewhere in there.
January 2025.
Yep.
Where do I want to start? So let's see. So the idea behind this is to talk to you about your career as a psychologist, and I'm curious about what you think you've learned about how people change in psychology as a profession.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could just start by summarizing, like, how long have you been a psychologist?
I've been a psychologist officially licensed since 2012, July 2012. So I guess that's 13 years. I did psychology-like things as in my postdoc and in my internships for about 10 years prior to that as well. So I've been at the therapy gig for about 23 years or so.
And typically having what kind of a client load?
Well, at the beginning when we first started, I would have 30, 35 clients. I was the only person producing, and I was packing people in. I believe now that a healthy load for a therapist is somewhere around 25 clients a week. With all the paperwork and the notes and all that, that's a heavy load. My experience is that folks burn out if they do more than that. They can't do, it's not sustainable to do more than that.
So you've probably counseled how many? 400 clients? How many clients do you think you canceled in your career?
I would make a rough guess at 700 or 800, but that's a guess. There's probably an intelligent way of figuring that out. I'd look in the computer and see, we keep records of everybody all the time, and I could probably get a read, but I'm guessing somewhere at 800.
And I'm not really looking for an exact number, just kind of that's a lot of people. That's
Yeah.
A lot of people who have helped over a long period of time.
Sure.
So what would you say you've learned about what helps people change or what prevents them from changing?
Well, I teach here. I have 13 mentees, and this is an important question. It's one of the first questions I ask people who are seeking to be a therapist is, what's your theory of change? I mean, what do we do that helps our clients change? And that's an important thing to be able to both articulate to peers and themselves, but we also need to let our clients know that this is what I'm going to do. This is how I think we're going to help you get what you want. And I have very definite opinions about this. I have a mentor that used to say, insight and 350 will get you a latte. That a lot of talk therapy these days is based on the assumption that if I help my client get to some awareness, some enlightenment, they will therefore change. My experience is it's much more complicated than that. One of the ways of looking at the human psyche is there's many systems in our brain for handling various things. One of the main ones is a cognitive system. What are we thinking? Another one is, what am I feeling about things? Now, those two systems are only loosely connected at the base of the brain. They're only loosely connected. Most people think, well, all I need to do is decide to stop doing something or decide to start doing something, and that'll be that. And a lot of therapy these days is built on, well, we're going to give you some awareness, we'll give you a couple of tools, and you'll you'll change whatever it is you want to change about yourself. I think for most deep problems that our clients come to us with, that is not effective. An example I have from my own life is when my wife and I would get into an argument early on in our marriage, I'd start yelling. I don't know why I'd start yelling. At the time, I didn't know. She'd just piss me off and I'd get angry. But I didn't like myself. And I would tell myself over and over and over again, that's not the way we want to do communication, so let's just stop it. And I was singularly unsuccessful in being able to not yell when we would get heated and have disagreements. And at the time, I was not in therapy. I was not aware of my inner parts at all. But what I've come to realize is I would cognitively think in terms of, I don't want to do this, so therefore I'm going to listen, or I'm going to take a few breaths or something like that. But that part of me would go away and another part would take its place. And what I've discovered, it's really my afraid little kid who is deathly afraid of being wrong, because in my family, being wrong could lead to blood. So it took me a while. We were 20 years into our marriage before I sought any help for anything, to realize cognitively deciding not to yell at her and to have some of my other quirks was not helping and was not working at all. I needed to get at how I felt about myself and how I felt about the world. Yeah.
So are you saying that a person's emotional system is stronger than their cognitive system, and that if you don't address the emotional system or the emotional reasons for why a person behaves a certain way, then you're not really going to get change?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Our emotional system we had long before we had our cognitive system. This frontal lobe, this part of our brain, came along very late in the developmental evolutionary process. We had this emotional system long before that, and it's designed for fight or flight and for dire circumstances and to having us live. Doesn't care if we're happy. It wants us to live. So indeed, our emotional system takes precedence usually over our cognitive system. And if I am scared in some way, or I am angry in some way, that usually overwhelms the cognitive system, especially if we're dealing with core stuff. What we were dealing with, I discovered when I would yell at my wife, is I would be feeling not enough. Core stuff. I was not enough. I was doing something wrong. I was going to be caught out. And for many of us, some form of not good enough is a core belief, especially in American society where achievement is so important. So I am saying indeed that for long-term change to take place, it is going to be necessary to help our clients change their emotional system, how they feel about themselves, how they feel about the world, in addition to whatever cognitive help we're giving them, teaching tools, thinking about things differently.
So does changing the emotional system, I think of that as healing. Is it something other than that?
Well, that's as good a word as any. Our emotional systems are going to help us make a decision about what things happened in our past and what they mean to us. So healing, I would reframe into an idea of what meaning did I make about myself, my family, the world, about the things that happened in my past. Often, kids make up meanings that are very detrimental to their self-image and to their being happy in their world. I'm not enough. I am meaningless. I'm stupid. I'm alone.
But those are thoughts. That's cognitive, isn't it? Isn't that above the emotional system because it's a cognitive?
Well, I would say that's a cognitive description of an emotional state. Not good enough is really kind of an emotional state of I don't think I can do that, or I'm afraid of doing that, or I don't want to look stupid, or I don't want to get humiliated. Those are all feelings of usually fear-based feelings. And you're right, there are kind of cognitive descriptions of them, but at base, these are emotionally driven things.
Yeah, so that just occurred to me while we're having this conversation, that to say, like, I'm not good enough, that is a thought, which is cognitive. But you're right, there's an emotional, like, when you just feel like something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can see when an adult, like, chides a child, or even communicates in some nonverbal way that the child is wrong. They shouldn't be doing that. You can see the child reacting,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a cognitive thing. They know something's wrong. They know that they are being disapproved of, or they're in danger.
Well, and we are designed to adapt. Kids are designed to adapt. So when they get feedback from parents or other elders or siblings that they're wrong, or they're bad, or they're not a good runner, or they're not a good artist, or they're not a good singer, that wires up right now. That we are designed to try and survive. So we're getting all this information, and we're making emotional decisions on who we are and what the world is, not cognitive decisions particularly. An example might be I reach up and touch a hot stove when I'm 3, and I get burnt. Well, that's a learn once system. I wire up, I will be leery of doing that again. Same thing if I, at 3, bring in a piece of art to my dad and say, here it is, and he looks at it and says, what is this? This is crap. You're no artist. I'm going to wire up right then. I'm going to make some meaning about it that has an emotional content that will then have effects on later decisions I make in my life. A lot of times these various things we are gathering and wiring up around coalesce into what I call negative core beliefs. If my dad compared me in my grades, if my dad compared me with my siblings, for instance, with my grades, or how good an athlete I was, or any topic, I generally, as the youngest, was not as good as them. So I grew up thinking I was never ever going to be enough. What did that do to me? How did I adapt? I was going to be the best at everything. I was going to prove him wrong. And to the outside world, it looked like I was very successful. I was not happy, but I was successful. And that's often the case with our clients. They come in, and from the outside world, they look like they should be happy as a clam. And they're not happy at all because they have these feelings of inadequacy of some kind that we keep from childhood, generally. And if therapy doesn't address those in an emotional way, in a way that helps people feel differently about themselves and differently about the world, long-term change is really hard.
So are there a lot of different methodologies to addressing the emotional component of helping someone change? I know, so we use scene work. That's one of the things that we do. That can't be the only way to do it. Are there lots of different ways? And I'm curious, what you think of scene work relative to other ways of helping people process the emotional component.
Well, the scene work you talk about, the looking at scenes where negative core beliefs might have blossomed or started or been enhanced in some way, usually scenes from childhood. That is we found to be a very effective way of it changing my emotional valence, my emotional meaning making around a scene. There are other ways. I often, for some clients that are nervous about or uncomfortable with doing scene work or uncomfortable doing empty chair work, that's where you'd pretend that a dad or a mom or is in one chair and the client is in another chair and they're talking to an empty chair. That has a way of bringing emotions up. The vital piece to this is it's not a chat. We're not chatting about dad or mom or what I'm afraid about myself. We're having an emotion about it. We need to bring the emotions in the room in order to help our clients change them. So scene work is an effective way of doing it. Writing letters. I will give a letter assignment. Okay, write a letter to that part of you that you were when you were 6, when dad chided you for having a bad report card. Write a letter to that part of you. Now, so that can be as effective. It gives clients some privacy. It gives them time. They can spread it out over a few days if it's too intense for them. Whereas scene work, it's right here and it can be very intense right now. Our clients are usually pretty surprised at how much energy they've stored around these various scenes in their lives. They're usually pretty amazed that they still can feel very, very much around particular scenes that seem inconsequential to them. So letter writing is an effective way. But the key part of it is, can we bring the emotions about that scene present and identify what it is I learned about myself in this scene and what's true. So a piece of scene work is going to usually reveal what it is I thought I learned. So sitting in front of my dad when I'm 5 years old with my first report card, I'm thinking, I'm stupid, I have no power, I am overwhelmed, I'm alone. And what's true about me now is I'm not overwhelmed. I am a powerful being. I am not stupid. I am plenty enough. That's true. And so being able to be in a scene and imagining a part of me who is going through some awful thing and being able to imagine hugging them and letting them know what's actually true about them, so changes the wiring in our brain about what we feel about ourselves and the world. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. Unfortunately, we don't have time machines, so we can't go back and change what happened. I can't change what my dad did to me, what he said to me. Can't change that. What I can help my clients change, and what I've helped myself change, is the meaning I made about myself in those instances. And that's the crucial piece. So whatever is done, whether it's letter writing or empty chair or scene work or just imagining that kid, just sitting on the couch and imagining that kid and what you'd like to say to him or her, can help change what we feel about ourselves in present day. It's all part of the same brain.
So is this thing that you've learned from your experience doing therapy all this time about the importance of the emotional component of the work and the methods for addressing that, is that widely accepted in psychology? I mean, is that, because I'm not sure a lot of psychological practice does those things.
Well,
is it accepted widely in psychology that that's valid?
That's hard to say. Psychology is mainly moved now to a model that has insurance companies and managed care. And what's taught now, what's easier to teach, is talk therapy, to do cognitive interventions with people. That's easy to teach out of a book. It's easy to do. Easier. Is what I do accepted? Sure. It's very accepted. There's been very good research on the effectiveness of this stuff. Unfortunately, it's an art to help people get into a scene, to help them visualize, to bring them out of scenes in a way that is positive and productive. It's more of an art, and that's not taught anymore. As far as I can see, that's not taught. So I'm sad about that, and my little practice here, 13, 14 people at a time, I'm teaching usually people right out of school who've learned in a book that these are the various cognitive ways of helping people out of depression or anxiety. I'm teaching them ways of getting at that emotional wiring, so it's a deeper change, a more effective change, longer term change. So I actually don't know out there what is. I do know what's taught is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is mainly, if I change what I'm thinking, I will change what I'm feeling. And that is sometimes the case, but most of the time not.
I'm going to follow up on that. I just realized that your computer's blinking red. Is there an easy way to stop it from doing that?
Sure, I can turn it off.
Okay. And I also realized I never turned this light on, which I intended to do.
So we'll have to do it all over again.
No. In fact, I may turn the light off. I'm not sure I really need it. I think that's why I didn't actually turn it on, because I'm not sure that I need it. But let's see.
Oh, that's what that was. I thought it was a screen of some kind.
Yeah, I don't think we need it. It's okay. So if CBT doesn't really have this emotional component, if it doesn't really address the emotional component, how is it effective?
Well, actually, the two places that there's been research, the profession has relied, especially since we've moved to managed care, big companies running the care, has relied on outcome studies. And an outcome study for depression or anxiety. The CBT folks were the first to come out with outcome studies that said if you follow these steps, you will be measurably less anxious or less depressed. And those folks, those arms of our profession that were able to have outcome studies that prove that, became acceptable interventions for therapists to use. There were several parts of psychology, the psychodynamic folks and the humanistic folks were slow on the uptake. They thought that we don't need to do that, we're effective, and they were much slower onto the scene. So I would say they are effective in that they can lower, if, for instance, somebody's anxious, a CBT method for lowering somebody's anxiety is to deep breathe, learn deep breathing exercises, and learn how to relax more. Do some progressive relaxation. That will be effective at lowering the measurable amount of anxiety. What may be more effective, in addition to those things, is figuring out why they were anxious in the first place. And get at why does it make perfect sense for this person to be anxious in these circumstances. And that's going to be related to the wiring I had as a kid. So combined together, they can be very effective. I'm all over CBT tools to really deepen the experience of the emotional work we do. So if we do a piece of scene work where the person gets a feeling of love for themselves and that I am enough, great. Well, we're going to create an affirmation around that, which is a CBT tool. I am a powerful and loving human being. combined with that experience that they had of loving themselves in that scene, can be very powerful. So I'm not saying CBT is not effective, but what I am saying is just accepting CBT as the way to do therapy is limiting, and most schools have changed around their curriculum to only teach interventions that have been outcome studied. It's much more difficult in the work I do with scene work and emotional components to it. It's much more difficult to do outcome studies for a bunch of technical reasons. There have been some, and they've been very positive, but not with the amount of research that has been done primarily with CBT. So it's now the kind of accepted modality, which I think limits schools and therefore limits students. They come here and they think what I'm doing is kind of magic because they haven't seen it before, they weren't taught it at all. And the whole idea of getting at our client's emotional system is foreign to them. And I personally think that's kind of crazy.
Let's see, what other questions do I have? Are there other things about being a psychologist or helping people heal and change that have surprised you over the course of your career?
Surprised me. I don't know if this is surprise, but the idea, many therapists have this idea that their clients will come in and some of them will be resistant. And they will get in the way of implementing the things the therapist know is going to help them, and the therapist asks them to do these things and they don't do them, and these clients then get labeled as resistant. I want to turn that completely around, and this is what I do with my therapy students, is they are doing exactly the adaptive stuff that they are doing in life, that they've adapted by being angry or being whatever resistance means. It usually means not trusting what the therapist is going to say, or being kind of ornery and negative, or being critical. Well, guaranteed they're doing in here exactly what they're doing out there. So therefore we're seeing the behavior they probably want to change. This is the gold. This is not they're getting in the way or they're being resistant. This is the gold. And the approach I use, using parts of self, would be to welcome that part in. I see your critic is here. You're welcome, critic. I can see you don't think much of what we're doing right now. I wonder if I can talk to any other parts of you. The one that, for instance, got you scheduled here, that adult part of you that got you scheduled. So I'm going to accept that part and not view it as something I've got to get rid of, but something I've got to make a connection with. That part's going to need my love and care and help to shift around whatever experiences they're making for my client on the outside world. So that was a shift of perspective of what our clients come in with is exactly the right thing that they need to come in with. Adaptive, it's going to be the same thing. Something that most therapists will probably miss is having a very accommodating client. Our clients come in and they're very accommodating. They do everything we tell them to do. We tell them to do X, Y, and Z, and they do X, Y, and Z, and we think we're doing marvelous work. Well, that's an adaptation too. I would want to know as a therapist, how has that accommodation limited their lives? Just like how has that resistance limited their lives? That we can collude with our clients to keep them stuck in the exact same thing they've been stuck in because they look so accommodating. So that's a whole different perspective, whole different level of how do we view our clients and how we can help them. So I would say that, I don't know if that's a surprise, but that is certainly an awareness I've come to over the years, that my clients are doing exactly what they need to be doing. And my goal is to welcome those parts and integrate other parts that will get them what they want in their lives.
Was that shift in perspective a journey for you as a therapist? Was there a time when you thought your clients were being resistant and then somehow came to see that differently?
I did a lot of volunteer coaching before I decided to jump into a PhD program. And in the particular group I got into with this volunteer coaching, very much had they're either with the program or they're not with the program. And our goal was to get them with the program. So they were being resistant, and we had tools to knock down the resistance. It was when I went to my PhD program at Fielding University and began my study of redecision therapy with the two of the really big names in redecision therapy, that they made a big deal about this isn't resistance, this is them, this is it, this is the gold, to shift it from resistance to this is the gold. So it was probably 5 years after my journey began of I wanted to help people and I wanted to figure out how to best do that, when I started actually getting taught how to do this stuff. Gene Kerfoot and John Gladfelter, two wonderful men.
Are they still teaching?
They're both deceased. They died about both within about a year of each other, about a year after I graduated. So there's not that piece at Fielding University anymore, not that track that you can take anymore. I'm kind of sad about that, actually.
So is there anything else about your life as a psychologist and your practice as a psychology that you think is important that we haven't talked about?
I've developed a practice that has many folks in various stages of their licensure. And that generally means they've got to get supervised hours, me being the supervisor. They've got to get supervised hours so that they can eventually sit for their license. Often it's up to 3,000 hours, at least 3,000 hours. And I would say that is my joy. I love getting somebody who has a lot of energy and wants to help and maybe has some learning, some experiential learning around how to help people, but mostly it's all books. And seeing them blossom into, my God, what's available, what's possible here. So right now I have 13 mentees, some of which are postdoctoral level folks, some of which are postmaster's level folks, and some of which are non-degreed folks that are doing what is called a practicum. Practicums are the kind of first clinical experience people get. So I have all ranges of clients and not clients, of mentees, and the group we have formed together is very helpful, and the older ones and more experienced ones help teach the younger ones, and I love the collaborative process and I love the feeling that each of these people are going to affect their own 800, 900 people, and the multiplicative effect of what we're doing here just charges me up. So I love teaching people that are eager to learn and they're smart as hell. God, I just love how smart these people are. They're a lot smarter than I was. And what they bring to the table. And they're going to be marvelous therapists. They already are while they're here, and then they go off and change their own worlds in some way. So I just love that piece. I didn't know I was going to love that piece. Another thing that's, now that you've asked me about what was surprising to me, we're one of the only psychological practices in Sacramento that take Medicare. And that means older people, it means young people, and it means disabled people. I didn't know how much I was going to enjoy therapy with older people. I just love, I thought it would be boring or I wouldn't connect or whatever it was, but I just love dealing with the older population and how they light up when somebody talks to them and respects them and wants to listen to them, and how much wisdom comes out of them is amazing. So that was a huge surprise to me. On how much I really love dealing with older folks. Now I am one. I don't know, maybe that's part of it too, but my preconception of what that was going to be like was totally wrong.
How, in the distribution of the age ranges of people that you have counseled, from young people to adults to older people, what kind of is the distribution there, do you think?
It's hard to say. I have done a lot of men's work, so in general my percentage of men in my practice, in my own practice, is much higher than most therapists. Most therapists have maybe 10 to 30% men and the rest women, or non-declared. And I had over 50% because I did most of my initial work on men seeking help. But I also had a huge practice with teens for a while. And so I had teens and I had older people. And I think I loved those two groups for different reasons. I love teen work. They haven't had time to build up the defenses that us adults have worked so hard to build up. And so they're there. Teens generally they're in the room with their anger, with their emotion, with their passion, with everything, and I love them. In general, I found if you treat them with respect and treat them like you treat any adult, instead of treating them like these wayward people that have to get with the program, they do marvelous work. They do wonderful work. So I was surprised at the teen work as well. And I've already described being excited about working with elderly people. So those were the main groups: men, teens, elderly, with all sorts of smattering of general psychological stuff, couples work and little kid work and things like that.
Was the teen distribution also more male than female, or was that?
I would say mostly male, actually. Often parents and or the teens would select gender similar, and I'm just thinking about that right now. I didn't do very many young women. I did a lot of young men.
So you recently stopped seeing clients yourself, and you're just supervising now. How do you feel about that decision?
Yeah, I've had a really good run, and I see a few clients. Medicare requires me to be the first interview on any Medicare client, so I do at least the intake. So I get I get at least to keep my fingers in the pie. But in general, you're right. I don't see my 20 or 30 clients. I usually see during the week. And in general, I'm really liking the pressure. No matter what, no matter how experienced the therapist is, there's a psychological overhead to doing therapy. And any therapist says that they're not, I would not trust. that whatever our clients bring in does rub off. As experienced as I am at leaving it here in the office and going home, there is an emotional overhead that creates tension and anxiety, some overhead and tension and anxiety. So the idea was I would lower that source of anxiety for me and be able to be more relaxed, and that's indeed what has happened. Since I get to do some intakes, I get to keep my finger on the pulse of things, but in general I live a life with much less anxiety, and what I do now is supervise, do a lot of supervision and training, which I love to do. It's my sweet spot, which doesn't create very much stress in me at all. So the general effect is to lower the amount of stress and increase the amount of peace I have, and I'm really enjoying that, actually.
So is there anything else about being a psychologist or about psychology that you think is important for people to know that we haven't really talked about?
I began and lived my life through mid-40s from a standpoint of anybody that needs therapy is either stupid or addicted. I was very negative. You know, you pull yourself up by the bootstraps and you don't accept help. A pretty standard masculine view of the world. Of you're independent and make your own decisions, and you don't need help. And unfortunately, I waited until my mid-40s before I got help kicking and screaming, and found out, my God, it was a life changer for me. So I would say my experience, especially with men, because of how men are culturally trained that to have all those traits to be independent and don't get help. I like to think that the world is changing some, that our society is making it okay for anybody to seek help, not just men, but anybody to seek help, and that it can be extremely beneficial. I come from a generation, and my dad's generation, both of which were very negative on this whole idea of therapy helping anything. But I have lived to see, both for myself and my male clients, that boy, we're missing out, and there is something to this idea that feelings matter. And I'd say the blossomed idea that I carry forward into my work and with most men is feelings are what imbue our lives with meaning. And to ignore them or to eschew them really limits our experience of our lives and limits our ability to give meaning and purpose to what we do. So I would say that's the area of psychology I hope is taking place, that it's actually a really good thing to seek help. And anybody who's trying to seek help, I would say keep seeking help, keep looking for a therapist that you click with. And if you don't click, move on. And when you do click with a therapist, there are worlds to open up. And lots of things that used to feel unsolvable can be solved, or at least changed. So.
What do you think about the relatively recent reemergence of psychedelics as a method for helping people change?
Well, I've been around long enough that first of all, I think the fear around psychedelics and the complete blackout on any research done on it in the United States for 45 years was a huge detriment. There does seem to be, and research is just now catching up, with Europe and other parts of the world that have been doing research on this stuff for quite a while, that there does seem to be huge benefits available. They're still trying to find out exactly how and what and with which substances, but there seems to be some real benefits and opportunities in the research around psychedelics and their use for depression and anxiety, and getting to these emotional areas, waking up these emotional areas that I want to wake up in scene work or in empty chair work. So I think it's very promising, and I regret the time wasted with the fear around psychedelics and other drugs over the past many years, and I'm looking forward to there could be some really good breakthroughs, helpful breakthroughs for folks, for things like PTSD and depression that doesn't ever go away, and anxiety that's overwhelming. There seems to be hope for those folks along the lines of the psychedelics.
Have you had any clients that have been on them and helped by them?
I've had 2 or 3 clients do the microdosing of ketamine. I don't do it myself. I'm not an MD. That has to be done by an MD. And it seemed to very much help them. It seemed to move them out of this kind of bottomed out state and take them up. Now, further research has to be done on long-term effects, both positive and negative long-term effects, but short-term wise, it seemed to very much help, especially depression. I'm hearing that there is research being done on anxiety as well that seems to be, and PTSD, that seems to be very positive.
Cool. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about?
No. I would say in general, I've loved being a psychologist. I have the shifting from being a manager in the technical industry into being able to be with people every day, intimately with people, and invited into sacred places in their lives has been the greatest gift of my life. I tear up thinking about it. That I've been invited into people's lives and been given the opportunity to help in ways that seem to be very positive, and I get to do that all day. I mean, I feel like I should have to pay for that. So that's been just a joy of my life, being a part of all these people's lives in ways that are helpful and have the part of me that wants to make a difference and be of service light up. So that's something that comes to mind.
I would imagine, too, just listening to what you're saying, that you also see parts of yourself in clients. I would think that you learn about yourself from being with clients. Is that true?
Well, certainly part of the training I do with my mentees is our parts are going to be affected by our clients. And again, any therapist that says that's not true is not a therapist. So absolutely, I see parts of myself in all my clients that I can identify with and relate to and give examples from my own life to have them wake up knowledge of their own parts. And as a therapist, I have to be aware of those things because I don't want my scared little kid running the session. I want my adult and my nurturer and maybe some of my excited little kid in the room, my curious kid in the room. I don't particularly want my critic or my scared little kid running the session because they have a different agenda. I want their information. They can supply me information. There's a term in psychology called body as instrument. My body is a good instrument, and all my parts are giving me information about my clients as they do their thing in here. And I want my adult to assess all those pieces of information. Maybe my critic is saying, well, why the hell are they picking such dumb partners anyway? Well, that's important information. That's probably something they hear from their friends and family all the time. That's important information, but I'm certainly not going to say it. I want all the information from my various parts, and then I help communicate that information from my parts and draw out their parts. So absolutely, the interaction of my parts with their parts occurs every time. And in training my mentees, a very important part of the process is them knowing the parts of themselves that are going to be triggered by various clients and how they're going to remain present with their adult in the room when they're getting triggered. So, yep.
Cool. I'm so glad we did this. It's great. Actually, it's really moving to listen to you talk about what it's meant to you and what you've learned, and to see, you know, working with being with you in the training, working with your training, and watching you work with people. Obviously, you know, you have a lot of experience, and your what am I trying to say? I guess it's beautiful to see kind of the richness and the culmination of all what you've learned and your experience as a psychologist, your professionalism and your the depth of it is really, really cool. So I'm glad that we did this as a chance.
I'm glad we did too.
Capture it.
Thank you.
Okay.